Yeah.
So one of the things that we got a lot of people asking me to ask you about was Benghazi. Now, before we get there, and you guys, please just allow me to get through this, I do want to read this to my audience. I'm going to skim through it, but it was a speech that Muammar Gaddafi gave. It was at the 64th UN General Assembly in 2009. Major piece of my own awakening, having read this and realized suddenly that I have no idea what the hell our government is ever doing overseas, and virtually everything they've told us has been a lie. So I'm going to get through this, skim through this speech, get his reaction on it, and then we're going to kind of go through everything that Muammar Gaddafi brings up. Now, I want to be very clear here. I don't agree with everything in this speech. Actually, this speech, I think, really is more questions than answers. And just to kind of put it in context for you guys listening, essentially, he's standing up before the General Assembly in 2009 and just saying, why are we pretending that the United Nations is about giving all of the nations equal power when really we know that just a few nations have any power here? And it's the UK and it's the United States and it's Israel, and everyone else is kind of just playing pretend. Okay, so we start speaking about just the UN Charter in general. The preamble of the Charter states that armed force shall not be used save in common interest. That is the preamble that we agreed to and signed, and we joined the United Nations because we wanted the Charter to reflect that. It says that armed force shall only be used in the common interest of all nations, but what has happened since then? 65 wars have broken out since the establishment of the United Nations and the Security Council. 65 since their creation, with millions more victims than in the Second World War. The preamble also states that if armed force is used, it must be a United Nations force. Since the establishment of the United Nations in 1945, if there is an act of aggression by one country against another, the entire United Nations should deter and stop that act. If a country, Libya for instance, were to exhibit aggression against France, then the entire organization would respond because France is a sovereign state member of the United Nations and we share the collective responsibility to protect the sovereignty of all nations. However, 65 aggressive wars have taken place without any United Nations action to prevent them. We are 192 nations and countries, and we are like the Speaker's Corner in London's Hyde Park. We just speak and nobody implements our decisions. We are mere decoration without any real substance. At present, the Security Council is security feudalism, political feudalism for those with permanent seats, protected by them and used against us. It should be called not the Security Council, but the Terror Council. We should not live in the shadow of this injustice and terror. Superpowers have complicated global interests, and they use the veto to protect those interests. For example, in the Security Council, they use the power of the United Nations to protect their interests and to terrorize and intimidate the Third World, causing it to live under the shadow of terror. From the beginning, since it was established in 1945, the Security Council has failed to provide security. On the contrary, it has provided terror and sanctions. 65 wars have broken out, either fighting among small countries or wars of aggression waged against us by superpowers. American presidents used to threaten us with all manner of weapons, saying that they would send us Desert Storm, Grapes of Wrath, Rolling Thunder, and poisonous roses for Libyan children. That was their approach. American presidents used to threaten us with operations such as Rolling Thunder, sent to Vietnam, Desert Storm sent to Iraq, Musketeer sent to Egypt in 1956, even though America opposed it, and the poisonous roses visited upon Libyan children by Reagan. Can you imagine? One would have thought that presidents of a large country with a permanent seat on the Security Council and the right of veto would have protected us and sent us peace. And what do we get instead? Laser-guided bombs carried to us on F-111 aircrafts. This was their approach. We will lead the world whether you like it or not and punish anyone who opposes us. Another matter that should be voted on in the General Assembly is that of compensation for countries that were colonized so as to prevent the colonization of a continent, the usurpation of its rights, and the pillaging of its wealth from happening again. Why are Africans going to Europe? Why are Asians going to Europe? Why are Latin Americans going to Europe? It is because Europe colonized those peoples and stole their material and human resources of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, our oil, minerals, uranium, gold, and diamonds, the fruit, the vegetables, the livestock, and the people, and used them. Can we trust the Security Council or not? Can we trust the United Nations or not? We must look into and investigate the bombing of Somalia. Somalia is a United Nations member state. Then there is the former Yugoslavia. No country was as peaceful as Yugoslavia, constructed step by step and piece by piece after being destroyed by Hitler. We destroyed it as if we were doing the same job as Hitler. The invasion of Iraq was a violation of the United Nations Charter. It was done without any justification by superpowers with permanent seats on the Security Council. Iraq is an independent country and a member state of a General Assembly. How could those countries attack Iraq? As provided in the Charter, the United Nations should have intervened and stopped the attack. There was a total massacre or genocide. More than 1.5 million Iraqis were killed. We want to bring the Iraqi file before the International Criminal Court, the ICC. If the court is unable to accommodate us, then we should not accept it. Either it is meant for all of us, large or small, or we should not accept it and we should reject it. The wars that took place after the establishment of the United Nations, why did they occur? Where was the Security Council? Where was the Charter? Where was the United Nations? There should be investigations and judicial intervention. Why have there been massacres? We can start with the Korean War because it took place after the establishment of the United Nations. How did a war break out and cause millions of victims? Nuclear weapons could have been used in that war. Those who are responsible for causing the war should be tried and should pay compensation and damages. Then we come to the Suez Canal War of 1956. That file should also be opened. 3 countries with permanent seats on the Security Council and with the right of veto in the Council attacked a member state of this General Assembly. And a country that was a sovereign state, Egypt, was attacked. Its army was destroyed, thousands of Egyptians were killed, and many Egyptian towns and entities were destroyed, all because Egypt wanted to nationalize the canal. How could such a thing have happened in the era of the United Nations and its charter? There were 3 million victims of that war. During 12 days, more bombs were dropped than during 4 years of the Second World War. It was a fiercer war, and it took place after the establishment of the United Nations. Then there was the war in Grenada. The country was invaded even though it was a member state. It was attacked by 5,000 warships, 7,000 troops, and dozens of military aircraft. It is the smallest country in the world. This occurred after the establishment of the United Nations and the Security Council. And the president of Grenada, Mr. Maurice Bishop, was assassinated. How could that have happened with impunity? Regarding Afghanistan, who says that if the Taliban form a government, they would possess intercontinental missiles or the kind of airplanes that hit New York? Did those airplanes take off from Afghanistan or Iraq? No, they took off from American airports. So why is Afghanistan being struck? The terrorists were not Afghans or Taliban or Iraqis. Why are we silent? As president of the General Assembly, Mr. Ali Trekkie should open an investigation of the assassinations files in addition to the war files. Who killed Patrice Lumumba and why? We merely want record of it. We want to know how an African leader, a liberator, came to be assassinated, who killed him. We want our sons to be able to read the history of how Patrice Lumumba, the hero of Congo's liberation struggle, was assassinated. Then there is the assassination of the United States President Kennedy in 1963. We want to know who killed him and why. There was somebody called Lee Harvey Oswald who was then killed by one Jack Ruby. Why did he kill him? Jack Ruby, an Israeli, killed Lee Harvey Oswald, who killed Kennedy. Why did this Israeli kill Kennedy's killer? Then Jack Ruby, the killer of Kennedy, died in mysterious circumstances before he could be tried. We must open the files. The whole world knows that Kennedy wanted to investigate the Israeli nuclear reactor. This involves international peace and security and weapons of mass destruction. That is why we should open this file. Then there is the assassination of Martin Luther King and the Black Reverend and human rights activist. His assassination was a plot, and we should know why he was killed and who killed him. Why is it that Iraqi prisoners of war can be sentenced to death? When Iraq was invaded and the president of Iraq was taken, he was a prisoner of war. He should not have been tried. He should not have been hanged. When the war was over, he should have been released. We want to know why a prisoner of war was tried. Who sentenced the president of Iraq to death? Is there an answer to that question? We know the identity of the judge who tried him. As to who tied the noose around the president's neck on the day of sacrifice and hanged him, those people wore masks. Do you know what people are saying? They are saying that the faces behind those masks were the president of the United States and the prime minister of the United Kingdom, that it was they who put the president of Iraq to death. Why don't those executioners not unmask their faces? Why do we not know their ranks? The United Nations is duty-bound to answer these questions. This is unprecedented in the history of war. It was sodomy, and it was an unprecedented sin never before committed by past aggressors or invaders. Prisoners of war are soldiers, but these people were raped in the prison by a state, a permanent member of the Security Council. I mean, he just goes on and goes through all of these things and then ends it by asking about viruses. He says, today there is a swine flu. Perhaps tomorrow there will be a fish flu, because sometimes we produce viruses by controlling them. It is a commercial business. Capitalist companies produce viruses so that they can generate and then sell vaccinations. This is very shameful, and it is poor ethics. Needless to say, Muammar Gaddafi was then murdered and sodomized.
He basically right there signed his death warrant. And he probably knew this, but the organization behind all of that, if not all of that, is 3 letters: CIA, Covert Operations. And Gaddafi was even trying to reach out to the United States and establish relationships, and he was giving us intelligence. He was acting as an intelligence gatherer for the CIA and the U.S. government. That was his first fatal mistake in terms of the shadow government, the CIA's covert action arm. The second was he decided he wanted to nationalize his currency and no longer be bound to the U.S. or the U.S. standard or the U.S. dollar. And that was the beginning of his end. That is a classic case of a CIA covert operation with plausible deniability to get rid of a leader that was not playing by the rules and not handing over its minerals and its oil, which are usually involved, and then getting rid of the U.S. dollar as the currency. And in the terms of the dark side of our government, he had to go.